Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the WIT podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Hernholm. And 15 years ago, I left the classroom to create the nonprofit organization WIT Whatever It Takes. To this day, we've worked with thousands of young people from around the world and helped them become entrepreneurs and leaders. But I missed the classroom, and that's why I created the WIT podcast. So every week, I'm bringing you somebody that you can learn from. They'll share their successes and setbacks, their trials and triumphs, in hopes that it will make you feel more equipped, empowered, and inspired to do WIT in your life. It doesn't matter if you're 16, 26, 66. We're never too young or too old to learn something new. This week, you get to meet Barrett, co-founder of the company Clore. Barrett, along with his co-founder Sebastien, have created a fire retardant, something that they created in response to seeing what happened with the wildfires in Northern California. In this episode, Barrett and I chat about what he's learned by being part of WIT Whatever It Takes, and also why people should take teen entrepreneurs seriously and even invest in teen entrepreneurs and teen entrepreneur programs. I know you'll enjoy this episode because there's something really cool about hearing a teenager talk about what they've learned from launching their business. All right, everybody, you know, at the Do It podcast, it's not about sitting back and listening. It's about being engaged. So get out those notebooks. Maybe it's your phone if you're going to take your notes on your phone. But remember, try to find 3 things that you can go and learn and apply in your life. All right, everybody, let's do WIT. Thank you, Barrett, for joining us today. Everybody, we have a very special guest. We have a teen entrepreneur, co-founder of the company Clore. And Barrett, where are you today? What part of the world are you in?
Yeah, I'm in California, more specifically Mountain View, California. I'm very excited to be a part of the show today. Had a chance to hop on and I was like, why not? This is a great opportunity and really excited with what, like WIT does and everything like that. So yeah, I'm happy to have a nice little conversation today.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. As we've been prepping for the release of our episodes, the official season of season 3, I've been doing solo episodes, and I thought I was going to do another solo episode today, but I decided it'd be better if I could get Barrett on because the topic of this week's episode ties into what I wrote about this week for my Today Show blog on why and how entrepreneurship programs prepare young people for the workforce, and bigger picture, why that means that companies and adults should be investing in youth entrepreneurs or youth entrepreneurship programs, because as a result, they're going to better prepare their future workforce. So I thought you can speak to not only just what you've learned being part of WIT, but the lessons that you've learned as being a young entrepreneur. Let's start with one of the topics that are mentioned in the article. How have you been able to be more, I would say, like agile or adapt easily to, are able to adapt to different situations or maybe even pivot? Is that something that you find yourself having to do as an entrepreneur more so than just being a student?
Yeah, I mean, so, actually, fun fact, in my school, we had like a little workshop about making resumes. And I thought that was really interesting because the first thing that, the counseling department went in and they said was always create like a different resume for each job that you're applying to. And I was like, that's kind of like what I'm doing with my business and what a lot of entrepreneurs do, because going back to what you're saying, just on like being agile, right? A lot of things require different, steps, different knowledge, different, ideas to put in place. So, when I'm pitching towards like a venture capital, for example, usually have like a different slide deck. And then when I'm pitching towards like consumers, I also have a different slide deck. But I think all of this kind of ties into this idea that we should and we always need to consider this idea that there are different target markets out there, there are different people we're trying to target. And I think that's the main way that I've been able to become so agile, is really just like knowing who I'm trying to target. and what like the outcome, the goal should be,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I'm trying to get funding, for example, I think I always try to keep that in mind when I'm creating like a slide deck,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get people to buy my product, right? I think that's something that you should definitely keep in mind. And that's kind of how I've been able to become so agile towards different scenarios, different
Mm-hmm.
situations. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because you think about, just because I have, inside scoop on things that are going on with Clore, since you're part of WIT and we work together. I know you get yourself in situations that you're talking to different audiences, whether it's somebody who you want to host one of your events, or it's someone that you want to invest in what you're doing, or maybe you're applying for a pitch competition. All those things require you to show up a little bit differently. Do you have a favorite though? Do you feel like you really shine in a certain space more than another? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I would say pitch competitions.
yeah,
I just love creating slide decks for those because, obviously we have videos of how our product works, and we always like to put a ton of videos of like our product, show them on stage for pitch competitions. And most of the time judges are like, wow, this is cool. Like you really have a video demonstration of how
yeah.
it works when you're like,
You don't you? Well, I mean, it's already been announced, but you're going to be at South by Southwest EDU. You got your company made the finals, right?
right, yeah.
Okay. Have you already started practicing your pitch for that?
Funny enough, I actually just started creating the slide deck today. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm still early on in the stages with creating the slide deck, but I think we'll definitely, keep the audiences in mind,
Mm-hmm.
probably put some videos in there, but those are all like important things to consider, like when you're
Yeah, I'm definitely going to need to, I want to see that. I want to give feedback on that when you get to that stage of what you want your pitch to be and what you want your visuals to be. And I think that's what I wanted people to understand this week on the Do It podcast episode, is even just this conversation that we're having right now, these opportunities to, like you were talking about, building your pitch deck or traveling to Austin to go pitch at South by Southwest EDU. These are things that are happening because you're involved in an entrepreneurship program. So obviously I'm biased and I'm partial to what we do here at WIT, but I also think there's other entrepreneurship programs out there that people can find in their area. But when you get involved in these programs, you get to practice skills, or I guess you should not even practice, you get to apply these skills in the real world, because pitch competitions are real. I mean, you're pitching for money.
right.
It's not fake. It's not monopoly money. And I think there's this other thing that I wrote about today in the article, was about these kind of programs help you develop your communication skills. And let's talk about that for a minute, because I know you've worked
Yeah.
on those over the years. Tell us where you started, where you are, what you've learned.
Right. I mean, it is a huge part, like communication, pitching, just being in front of an audience is a huge part of running a business. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people tend to kind of like look over this aspect, but it really starts to get real when you're trying to pitch your product in front of like tens, well, I want to say like thousands, but not yet.
Yeah,
But
I
like,
mean, maybe, who knows? I mean, you've got a couple of
right.
things coming up that could put you in that situation. And I'm even thinking about the way you have to communicate in emails and phone
Yeah.
conversations, in-person meetings. What kind of skills have you learned? And I'm sure you've had some mistakes along the way, but I'm sure you learn
Yeah.
from them.
Yeah. Number one thing I would say is you always have to double check your emails. And you like you just can't get enough of that, because a lot of times you write an email and you're like, this looks good. And you send it and you're like, oh, there's a huge mistake. And
Mm-hmm.
often like, even the smallest like grammar mistakes might leave a bad impression on like who you're
Mm-hmm.
trying, you know, especially if you're trying to email someone that's really important towards like what you're doing, your goals. Um, but that's something really important. But in terms of like speaking and pitching, I would just say be confident, because confidence goes a long way. If
Mm-hmm.
you like, if you know what you're saying, if you know what you're talking about, then you have no reason to not be confident. And I think, if you truly believe in your product, what you're selling, you should be confident. And obviously that's something that's kind of like contagious. People can understand, realize when you're confident and not. So it's a huge aspect of like performing in general, right?
Do you think you've grown in your confidence since being part of WIT and running Clore?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I never would have imagined that I would be kind of up in a stage presenting my product, clicking like those pointer things, the
Yes.
next slide. I mean, I've been watching that like all my life, watching people, walk up the stage and then they click on something like that's so cool. And
Mhm.
I finally did that, last year when I attended the Forest Innovation Summit where we presented towards, a decent
Mhm.
amount of people, decent sized audience, and we kind of got a chance to take Q&As, right? Show a demonstration of our product as well and our pitch deck. I mean, obviously that's like a big formal event, but obviously I would say I've grown a lot because I have the confidence to go up now,
Mhm.
and something that
Mhm.
often doesn't come easy for people. And public speaking, I think there's like a statistic out there. It's like one of the hardest things
Mhm.
to do, right? And it's intimidating to say the least. Yeah.
I think about, do you remember the first time you went on TV?
Oh yeah, yeah. With America Trends.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, think about how much you've grown even since then, but
Right. Yeah.
also you did that too.
Yeah. I
Very,
mean,
yeah.
that's a huge step, right, in the right direction.
Hmm.
I mean, I look back at that, I'm like, could have done this thing better. I could have
Hmm.
done, there are improvements, obviously, but, I think each step makes me closer to that.
Totally. I mean, I even do that. I recorded a podcast today and earlier today. And my big thing is to get off the podcast, or after I finish the podcast, I go right into like what I could improve on,
Right.
because I record them as if they're live. I mean, there's not a lot of editing that goes on with them, and I don't have a lot of time with each guest. And so when I get off of the podcast, I've gotten better at it. I don't beat myself up too much because it's not helpful. But I do have some moments like today, something happened on the podcast and it just made me like cringe. Like even when I got off, I thought like when I kept thinking about it, when I was making lunch, I was like embarrassed for myself. And, but like you, I think you just take the lesson and then you do better next time. And I think that's what we get to
Yeah.
do as entrepreneurs. And I think that's what WIT provides you. That's what I get to do in my life, is put yourself out there. You win some, you lose some, but you just keep going.
Yeah. And I think that's something that like these entrepreneurship programs really try to hone in, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these programs do include like some sort of pitch. And I think that's also a great like learning lesson, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's money or not, right? There are a lot of lessons that you can take away, but don't beat yourself, don't beat yourself,
Mm-hmm.
make a mistake.
Now you are part of a team. So you've got two.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's give some shout out to your partner in crime.
Yeah.
Who's your teammate?
My co-founder, Sebastien Burkhardt, he's been a great friend of mine, and we've been making a lot of progress recently, and I'm really happy about that.
What have you learned through working together on running this business?
I would say communication. I think
Mm.
you really have to stay updated with each other, especially like when things are getting a lot busier. For
Mm-hmm.
example, like he couldn't make the podcast today, and I wanted him to come, but then he was like, "No, you should do it. It's a great opportunity." Um, but I think we often like to stay updated with each other, what we're doing. It really helps us keep on track, stay on track with like our
Mm-hmm.
goals, right? What we want in the future and kind of the long-term vision for the company.
Can you walk through, like, I just am thinking about how people could best understand. I mean, I've been witness to it, so I've got to see your transformation and your growth and your maturity through the time of being involved in WIT and running your business. What would you say in like two or three sentences have been like the biggest changes for you or growth for you? I mean, I know you mentioned confidence. Are there other things that you've experienced that'd be helpful for a parent who's thinking about their child participating in a program, or maybe even an investor who's thinking like,
Right.
kids, and why am I investing in a kid?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I think confidence is a big part, but I would also say, like, if there's one thing that I've really learned, it's that, you have to keep trying, right? Even with one failed attempt, you should keep on going. I think that's something that a lot of people fail to understand, is even if something doesn't go your way, right, you should still continue doing it. I mean, I think that's simply said, right? Just, I mean, obviously there's like a cliche statement out there. It's like, never give up. But I think that's something that you just have to be prepared for. A lot of work, a lot of intensity towards like achieving what you want. And none of it comes easy. But I think, you just have to keep on going, even if something stops you along the way.
Yeah, I think I think at WIT and in the work that you get to do running your business, you do build that resilience, that resilient muscle, that resiliency muscle or that the grit, the fortitude, which you don't really get to build in school, because if something doesn't work out in school, you're on to the next test, you're on to the next thing. You don't get to circle back to it and try again on the same thing. And I think what I've seen you do at WIT and even with Clore is you just keep going back. Like, if something doesn't work, you try again, a different way to market your idea, a different way to promote your work. And it's so fun. It's fun for me to watch you do that. I do know that it's not always fun to have to do, but I do applaud you with that.
Yeah. And I think, in your article, I mean, this often goes back to like resilience, as you said, but in your article, I think you also do a great job mentioning how like these teen entrepreneur programs really help hone in on these skills of like resilience, right? And being adaptable, being agile towards like participants and those who kind of take part in these activities.
Do you think that people should invest in teen entrepreneurs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we see this a lot. I think a lot of companies actually are starting to do this. For example, the South by Southwest competition, I think that's a huge investment towards like teen entrepreneurs, where I think it's sponsored by like the Allstate Foundation. They're trying to kind of invest in the younger generation. And often I think WIT does this as well, right? They have these programs available for a lot of these young entrepreneurs. And then I know you've also done the South by Southwest, the competition that, you were doing a couple of years ago. And a lot of these companies realize that there's potential. I mean, after all, I would say like we're the generation that kind of takes the lead, the next generation. And I think now is a really great time for companies to recognize this.
You do have some exciting news. I don't know how public it is yet, but am I correct in saying that you have made the finalist for the Frigo cheese competition?
Yeah. I think that's kind of public at this point.
Okay. We don't know the extent of the win, I think, but we know that you've made the finals, which is very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I guess that's another company that has chosen to see the value in investing in young entrepreneurs and putting money towards young people's ideas. So yeah, that's you're involved in two of them, South by Southwest EDU, you've got Frigo Cheese, you've got the Allstate Foundation. So I think that is a really good point for anybody who's thinking like, is there a market for investing in teens and entrepreneurship? And obviously there is. Even just talking to Barrett, we've come up with a few of them right here. I want to do what we like to do when we are kind of nearing the end of a podcast episode. And I like to put you through the rapid fire questions. He can't prep for this, everybody. So he doesn't, none of my guests
so
get
scared.
it. None of my guests get the rapid fire questions ahead of time. I just get to do them and they get to answer them in real time. The challenge for you, Barrett, is how quickly you can answer them. Because I do them, I ask them quickly, and then your challenge is to answer them quickly. And are you ready?
Okay, sure.
Okay, here we go. What is a book you'd recommend and why?
Oh, okay. Okay, so there's this book that I always like to talk about. It's called The Third Door. It kind of just entails this person, this author of the book, who actually wrote a ton of emails trying to reach like these CEOs, these founders of these large companies. And oftentimes he didn't find success in obviously emailing them. I mean, if I emailed like Tim Cook today, he probably wouldn't really respond. I mean, he's a multi-million billionaire running a very large company, but he often found like creative ways towards finding a method in contacting them, whether that's, going to events or finding like personal methods, like, for example, reaching their friends who could give them contacts. But the reason this book is called The Third Door is because obviously there's a door, there's a second door, but you oftentimes, he's trying to say, you want to find the third door. And that's why I really like the book. It's about creativity, finding, new and unexplored methods towards achieving your goals. And I think that's a very nice message to tell to everyone today.
Love it. Okay. The education system would be better if fill in the blank.
The education system would be better if, I would say, if we had better resources. There are a lot of, for example, schools don't really teach entrepreneurial programs, lessons. Obviously, some schools have like econ, for example, but I think a lot of that is kind of at the low commitment level. I mean, we see a lot of investment towards like arts, but I feel like there should be a wider range of activities that people can participate all the time. And for me, I really like entrepreneurship. Starting my own business, frankly, that's something that has always been of interest to me. And I wish there were better resources for that. And obviously it might sound a little bit, biased coming from like a Do It podcast, which is all about this. But, I truly think that schools should be investing more. And I think WIT has partnerships too with schools and local districts.
We do. I agree with you completely. I mean, the reason I started WIT was because these programs weren't in all the schools. So I'm like, okay, fine, we'll create an outside school activity. But I'm with you. I wish all schools prioritize teaching business, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, all those things. I totally agree. And then I could go out of business, which is fine. That's the point of creating this, because there was a need. If there's no longer a need, then we will no longer do our programs. But we will do the podcast, because the podcast is too much fun. Okay. Who has helped you in your life? Give them a shout out right here on the Do It podcast.
I would shout out Sebastien Burkhardt. I think he's helped me a lot with like growing my confidence and so forth. But I think he's just a great business partner. I love talking to him, discussing stuff with him, business deals.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's probably a podcast for another time. We'll bring Sebastien on for lessons learned with some business deals that we've navigated. Okay. Yeah. What is something that you've done that you're proud of?
Ooh, I mean, I would say there's a lot, but I think all this comes down to kind of just starting Clore. I think I'm really proud of just starting company, especially, when I'm in high school. I think not a lot of people do that, and I recognize that. But at the same time, I'm just really proud of like myself, Sebastien, for kind of coming together and solving a need, right? Solving a problem.
Yeah.
Right. Not solving a need, but kind of solving a problem that kind of exists still today.
Yeah. I agree. You should be incredibly proud of yourself. Okay. What do you think is the best quality to look for in a friend?
Ooh, I would say their personality, just having a great open personality. being able to talk to other people,
Mm.
just having a friendly, approachable kind of attitude towards life in general too, I think is something that I want to try to live by, and I hope I am trying to live by. Yeah.
Okay, what are 3 words to describe you?
Ooh. Well, I would like to say I'm funny. Funny, energetic, and I'd probably say very witty, kind of
That's
like
true. That's
um
true. That's a good one because I've experienced this on some of our Zoom meetings. Okay. What song do you listen to in order to put you in a better mood?
ooh. Well, I mean, I really like AJR. I think that's a really nice band. I don't have a specific song, I don't,
Okay.
but I like AJR. There are a lot of music out
That's
there.
your go-to.
Yeah, that's a good too.
Okay, so let's think about a year from now.
Ooh.
What do you hope has happened with Clore?
Well, I hope one, we're still in business.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I hope that we can kind of meet new people, bring more people on board, and kind of just expand our influence, increase our
Mhm.
growth. Because at the current moment, obviously, by the way, I just realized I never really told everyone what Clore is, but Clore is like we create fire retardants for communities that are affected by wildfires. You just spray our product and it'll stop a fire. Now, I really hope that we can reach like counties, communities that are heavily affected by wildfires. Currently, we're talking to a couple, but I really just hope we can expand the influence. And I see Clore totally doing that within a year. But those are like the big main goals right there.
Okay, expansion, that's a good goal. More customers,
Yeah.
love it. More awareness, more brand awareness. And what about you, Barrett? A year from now, what do
Yeah.
you want to be able to say that you've done or accomplished or achieved?
Well, I want to say that I have presented at a couple more events.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think the biggest thing is I just want to say that I'm proud of myself. Like I'm happy with where I am and I'm happy with what I'm doing. And obviously, I don't have a direct answer for that, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll come naturally. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm, proud of myself, I'll acknowledge myself.
Yeah. Well, that's a very wit way to be, Barrett. Thank you so much for joining us. I thought you'd be such
Yeah,
a fun guest to have on the show as we talked
yeah,
about why entrepreneurship programs are valuable and needed, and whether it's our listener or viewer getting involved in WIT or finding one in their neighborhood and their community, do it. I think you can hear, even just like everybody heard from Barrett about the value being involved in WIT has brought him, and the connections that he gets to make and opportunities that he gets to have. And Barrett, where can they find you if they want to learn more about you and
yeah.
Clore?
Well, you can go to Clore, so CLOREFR.com, or you can find us on Instagram at CLOREFR.
You can also find them on stage at South by Southwest EDU
Oh,
in
yeah.
Austin, Texas in March, right? Do you know the date of that?
Yeah, I think it's March 6th.
All right. So they'll be on stage March 6th. Uh, in some ways representing
Austin.
WIT, but mostly representing themselves. and Clore. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Barrett. Wherever this episode finds you, I hope it finds you doing whatever it takes. And we'll see you next time. Just keep doing WIT. Thank you, Barrett.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Do WIT podcast. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment with your takeaways. And if you want to join WIT, you can check out our summer classes at doingwit.org, and maybe we'll see you on the podcast and in our classes. Keep doing WIT.